all about giving flowers before we get started. So can we just have a round of applause for Dawn and her team at P3 for putting this together. So I'm honored to be here for a couple reasons. One, I think we have the coolest topic out of all the topics, although all of them were excellent. And the panel that we have assembled today, they're phenomenal. I've read their bios and kind of did a little research, and I was just blown away. So I'm honored just to be here to get the insights and be able to pick the brain of these hyper intelligent and super successful people. So today we're going to talk about AI. We're going to dispel some of the myths. What's real? What's not? What haven't you seen in Hollywood? We've all seen Skynet and how it takes over the world, right? But we're here to talk about what's real and how it's really affecting not only the military space but the civilian space. Before we get started, though, I would love to introduce our wonderful panelists. Rommel can't be here, so when I get to his section, I'm going to play his video. But we're going to start with Natalie Pierce, a partner at Gunderson Dettmer, right? And she's the chair of the employment practice. She's a partner, and at Gunderson Dettmer, she focuses on the needs of emerging companies, venture capital, and growth equity firms. The mic. Oh no, Cam has the mic. You can pass it to Natalie. Yeah, he's got it. Okay. He was hoarding the mic. She focuses on the future of work, including counseling companies on the incorporation of generative artificial intelligence and other technologies. Natalie hosts Gunderson's Future Work Playbook podcast and was selected as a Fast Case 50 award winner. Congratulations. One of Daily Journal's top artificial intelligence lawyers and top labor and employment lawyers, and San Francisco Business Times Bay Area's most influential women, and was a member of the governing council of the ABA's Center for Innovation. So awesome resume. Give you a couple seconds if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think we should. I don't think this is on.
No.
Michael, come.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
There you go. There we go. Next, we have Cameron Chell, who's a friend and partner of ours at PromoDrone, and we're excited to be here. Cam is the CEO of Draganfly, a North American award-winning industry-leading drone solutions and systems developer, serving the public and military markets for over 25 years, which is incredible. His 30-year career as a tech entrepreneur includes meaningful developments in several tech sectors, including cloud computing, space observation optics, e-commerce, blockchain, and machine vision and artificial intelligence. Next, we have Patrick Houston, Brigadier General of the U.S. Army, retired. Is it Houston? Is that how you pronounce it? Houston. Okay, cool. So make sure. General Patrick Houston, thank you for your service. Retired after 35 years in the Army, including service as a Ranger, prosecutor, and commanding general. He was a member of the Pentagon's Responsible AI Board. He is a lawyer and member of the FBI's AI Task Force, who also lives in San Francisco. So thank you. Next, we have Mr. Mark McKinnon, partner at Fox Rothschild. For over 3 decades, Mark has represented clients in virtually all areas of the law that touch the aviation industry, including U.S. and foreign government regulation, administrative enforcement, litigation, and commercial matters. He is particularly well-versed in uncrewed aircraft systems, UAS, law, assisting clients in their efforts to obtain approval for complex commercial drone operations. So we all know how valuable that is, so thank you for that. And Mr. Rommel Martinez isn't here today, so I'll read his bio, and then I'll start just kind of with the flow of the agenda today. Mr. Martinez is an artificial intelligence researcher with over 25 years of experience in software engineering, systems administration, and programming language theory. He developed Valmes, which is an augmented AI system that takes a novel approach to systems and computation. So thank you to all of our esteemed panelists, and welcome. So we have here, I know there's something I'm supposed to play here. Let's see.
Hi, I'm Rommel Martinez, the CTO of ASTN. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be with you here physically for this event due to travel restrictions. AI is a term coined by John McCarthy of MIT in 1955. Intelligence in broad terms is the ability to comprehend and learn and apply that knowledge to practice. The term, however, is not limited to human intelligence. Artificial, on the other hand, means man-made. It implies that something is a result of the human mind and creativity. AI implies a kind of intelligence that is not exhibited by organic life form from natural causes. It means the encapsulation of knowledge and ideas to solve problems and tasks outside the domains of modern nature. AI, however, is not a replacement for human intelligence. AI may be able to replicate some of the things that we humans do, but the intelligence that humans possess is too broad to be simplified down into something that is easily reproducible. For humans to develop intelligence, it is important to experience the world from different lenses. Interacting with other humans is crucial to developing this kind of intelligence. AI, I believe, stops becoming artificial when it is able to understand and exhibit morals, ethics, values, the qualities of human intelligence. So, how does AI work? AI has been around since the late 1950s and it has taken many forms through the decades. The kind that we're seeing a lot lately is based on neural networks with applications in machine learning. These kinds of systems take in data and use them to train or to teach a machine how to make computations and decisions. They find out the most ideal paths to arrive to particular goals while staying as efficient as possible. Now, how is it different with autonomy? What is its relationship with it? Autonomy is the quality of a system to make decisions without the interventions of operators, be it a human or another autonomous system. Autonomous systems allow us to work productively and steer us away from dangerous work. However, blind and completely unsupervised autonomy can also be harmful because such systems may act in direct opposition of the needs of humans. We have developed Valmy's augmented AI as a result of more than 2 decades of research and development. It's a different kind of AI that combines philosophies and ideas all the way from 1960s. Supplantive AI is the kind of AI that is meant to take the place of, replace, and supersede humans in the process. Augmentive AI, on the other hand, is the kind of AI that bolsters, supports, and promotes human intelligence and puts them right in the center. It means augmenting existing information sources with additional information to widen the scope of a knowledge system. I believe that humans should be the final arbiters of critical decisions instead of machines. So we have developed technologies that allow you to perform in-flight system updates of drones without interruptions. This allows an operator to deploy a swarm of drones while making delicate modifications to the mission parameters without having to recall them back to headquarters. This has applications with recon, advanced air mobility, and first responders. I know the rest of the panel will talk about other AI use cases. Thank you again for your time, and I'll talk briefly to you at the end.
To get back to the foundation, let's level set with 30 seconds each as to your definition of what AI is and what it isn't. And Cam, we'll start here with you.
Thanks, Jamar. It's great to see you. And it's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks, Don, for putting this on. That's very difficult to try to define what AI is and what it isn't because it's changing every day and it's expanding every day. So the first machine vision, and it was called AI back in the late 80s that I got involved with, was actually using machine vision to pick parts on assembly lines. And we called it AI back then. Today, it wouldn't be AI. It would be like low level machine vision. So the whole notion of, and I think one of the reasons that the notion of AI is conscious has changed so much more recently is so in the forefront because it's dealing with something that's really, really close to us, which is language, right? And language models and being able to interpret natural language as opposed to having to put in a code or something to make something happen. So I'm not going to try to define it because it will be wrong, whatever I define it as, for sure. And not because likely because I'm wrong right now, but because it's evolving so quick. So I'm not trying to be elusive around it, but the AI that our kids or my kids will be experiencing will be they won't even think of it as AI. They'll think of it as a decision matrix, or that's just what happens. And their level of what they have to think or be present of or contemplate will be the next level of AI. Sentientness or whatever, is that true? I don't know, but I'm not smart enough to really think that through at the moment.
Yeah, let's pass it down.
Well, I'm not going to try and define it either, but I will define what it is not, so far as we know from the cases that have come out so far. AI is not a person and it is not an individual. And those distinctions are going to be very important for some of the legal concepts we're talking about later.
Yeah, so it is true, the evolution. It's sort of a question of what type of artificial intelligence are we talking about. And I think what has brought it to the forefront of everyone's mind is that it really was very task specific. But now to have the power to create, which is so human-like when you look at the application of generative AI, it really is a tool for everyone because you don't need to understand how to program. You don't need to be a coder. If you become a prompt engineer, I mean, every day people are discovering what can be done. So to create content via art, via prose, it's a very exciting time, I think, it's not what it was as someone who's been speaking on this subject for a decade now about the integration of transformative technologies into the workplace. This couldn't be a more exciting time that we're living in because I think many of us thought maybe we would be where we are today in a decade, but it's here and it's for everyone, cross skill sets, cross generations. So yeah, I would say the way to define AI, it's a tool for us, all of us.
Thanks. I'll just add on with one of what I think is the most important attributes of AI, and that is that it changes, it evolves. What you have on Monday is different from what you have on Friday, and that's an important aspect of this. Hopefully it's learning and evolving and trending in the right direction, but it doesn't always do that. Sometimes it goes off in the wrong direction, and you just need to be aware of that and understand what we can do to put guardrails on that important aspect of it.
Yeah, thank you for the responses. That was awesome. And there's a big difference between AI and ML, right? That's a distinction I think people don't qualify or quantify quite enough. So we'll hopefully talk about that a little bit. But we'll get into some of these use cases, especially now that that's happening. Cam, I want to talk to you about Draganfly, how you all are using AI, especially around 3D modeling, digital twins for commercial use with drones, inspections, construction sites, biometrics. I know you have that biometric scanner that you all are using, pretty sophisticated tech. Let's talk about it. How are you using it at Draganfly, and what do you see the future looking like for the organization?
Yeah, sure. So at Draganfly, we're very kind of focused on like a specific customer need to drive where we spend our time and focus. And so the AI that we did develop over the last couple of years, kind of before the large language model boom has happened, is we developed a system which is really kind of based on sophisticated machine vision, which will allow the cameras on our drones to actually read vital signs. So it's got, obviously significant public safety, military, and search and rescue applications, but the cameras and the software on our drones, from quite a distance can read heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, blood oxygen level, heart rate variability, all things that are indicative of things like infectious disease or bleeding out or life expectancy in a matter of minutes and predictability. And the more testing that we do with it, the smarter the AI gets in terms of predicting what's going to happen or what the next course of action is. Now, the reason that can happen is probably where I think drones will have the largest impact in the world of AI is, I don't know if this is actually true, but I always like to say nothing collects data better than a drone. I mean, you're in a 3D sphere, you've got an amazing amount of sensors, you've got an incredible amount of battery life, you've got vantage points, it's just incredible what you can pick up. So what was unexpected for us in that particular case is that the more times that we used it and then used generative AI, the more times that we had different responses for, okay, this is the next best response, or this is the next action you should take. And that was we had not planned on that at all in any way. That was just something, and it's not something we're putting into practice right now, but it's incredibly, incredibly interesting. So I think the more data that you collect, in particular with the drone, because we're at a drone conference, the more because you can collect so much data and it can change so quickly, the more specific tasks that drone, if you will, is going to be able to interpret to be able to move forward with. And I think ultimately, right now in drones, it's like use case. What specifically are you using it for? It's going to be about, I think we're going to be building drones to adapt to what the AI is saying the next best use case or the next best application or the next best action is. And I think right now we're focused on what the customer's telling us. In the next 36-ish months, we'll be focused on developing drones on what the AI is telling us based on that data.
Yeah, thank you. That's amazing. Couple words that I've heard consistently: human, right? That's how do you get this machine to think like a human, but in a faster, more responsive way, right? To decrease the amount of time it takes to make a decision, as you said, could be life-saving, information. So I think that's important. I want to talk to Natalie now about workplace efficiency. How are you seeing AI being deployed in the workspace? We've got Chat GPT. We have all these new toys and technologies and tools that people are using for whether it's creative, whether it's workplace efficiency, optimizing, internal solutions. So we'd like to talk a little bit about what you're seeing and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, so many ways. I would say that when the pandemic hit and workforces went remote and distributed, you would see a lot more deployment of these AI HR tools, if you will, both for monitoring productivity, what are the employees really doing, where are our vulnerabilities in the workplace, as well as really looking to automate hiring and even promotion decisions, tools that can see who's likely to exit a workforce. So I can give you maybe a good example is Unilever. So Unilever is a consumer products company. It has about 400 products under its name. Anyways, every year it gets 1.8 million applications. It's a lot of applications to go through, and it hires about 300,000 employees a year.
Wow.
And so several years back, they thought, well, there's got to be a better way, and it is. It's about what is repetitive routine, what can we do better through automation? And so by using a combination of Pymetrics, which is neuroscience, game-based testing, so the employee goes through, you can assess like the cognitive skills, the risk-taking, emotional emotional intelligence. So it really did look for the competencies. And then layered onto that was the use of HireVue, which is also automated interviewing to assess candidates. They had this program, which was a leadership program, and every year 250,000 employees would apply for 800 spots on the program. And so they were able, using that tool, to get the finalists down to 3,500. By doing that, they saved 70,000 hours worth of interviewing and application reviews. They were able to get the process down from 4 months to hire to 4 weeks to hire. And because they use the same systems on everyone, it eliminated a lot of the human biases that go into some of the selection processing. So they had their most diverse and successful class ever. And then I want to give one more because I think it's good for this audience, which is an example of how artificial intelligence is being paired with things like augmented reality. So Red 6, based here in Southern California, veteran founded, they thought there's got to be a better way to train fighter pilots, because think how dangerous and expensive it is to train fighter pilots to protect the U.S. to the tune of billions of dollars, and then think of the fuel costs associated with that. So by using airborne tactical augmented reality systems, they're able to, through the helmets of the fighter pilots, they're still in the air, but they're in the simulated fighter context. And not only can it be one pilot, you can do across multiple pilots who are together fighting in this very real combat situation, and they can collaborate together. Now, the additional applications, I think, are just countless of what can be done when you do combine artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and virtual reality.
Wow, that was amazing. So we're talking reducing unconscious bias and applicant fatigue to create a better alignment with these positions, which ultimately lead to better performance, better quality work, and overall a more successful company at the end of the day. So that's incredible. Let's go to Mr. Mark here. Let's expand on Natalie's list a little bit, and let's shift a little bit to public safety and some of the facial rec.
So just in general on the use of it, that's becoming more and more of a hot topic here in the United States. We'll talk maybe a little bit later about
Especially
Europe.
in California.
Yeah, but using biometrics and things like that for facial recognition has become more and more under scrutiny. There are 4 states right now that have biometric privacy protection laws in place. There are probably about another dozen that have been looking at it, including California. But that's kind of like the law in that area is about the same as it was for drones maybe 6 or 7 years ago, where like we're at the beginning of really, I think, a flood of not just the use of facial recognition, but biometrics in general, because AI actually makes it much easier to scan the vast masses of data that you need to make those systems really work. But in a lot of places, using biometric and facial recognition does raise, for law enforcement, it does raise, Fourth Amendment issues, whether or not you're subject to a search. As I said, that's something though that's going to be regulated primarily, I think, at the state-to-state level. How much power does the state want to take away from law enforcement under various circumstances? And I said we'll probably talk about this later, but in Europe they've kind of drawn the line where they're much more aggressive about protecting privacy than you see in the United States, certainly at the federal congressional level.
Yeah. And I know there's differences between like recognition and capture, right? Where you're saying you see something, but then you actually recognize it and then comparing it to something in order to make a decision on a course of action associated with that. So Patrick, let's talk to you a little bit about the military uses around it. How are you seeing AI being deployed? What are some of the efficiencies there? Pros, cons, good or bad or indifferent?
Sure. Jamar, actually, I want to share 2 use cases, one commercial and one military briefly. On the commercial side, I just want to talk to you about one company that's about the most successful company in the world that you might not have heard of, and it's called the Ant Group. And this came on the scene a few years ago as an online bank with a very fresh vision. And I think anyone who's ever applied for a loan can appreciate this. They had a business model that I summarize as 3-1-0. You can complete your online loan application in 3 minutes. 1 minute after you push send, it will analyze your loan application, and if approved, transfer the loan proceeds into your account electronically, and zero humans involved in typical transactions. And it achieved their goal. Very ambitious. It now has over 2 billion customers with less than 10,000 employees. That kind of ratio is outrageous, and it creates unbelievably profitable margins, and it can only happen through the magic of AI. And so this company is now the most successful online digitized monetary system in the world. But the reason you might not have heard of it is that it's in China. It is the financial arm of Alibaba, which is basically China's Amazon. All right. But anyway, it does show the promise and potential of AI out there when used to really achieve a goal. And it's kind of central to their entire theme. Now I want to switch to a military use. You think I'm going to talk killer robots because that's what everyone always thinks of when they talk this. I'm not. I'll defer that as a potential ethical discussion later. I'm going to talk what's far more common, something like smart maintenance programs. Let me tell you what I mean by this. My last 2 cars were a pickup truck and a BMW. The maintenance on my pickup truck was easy. You change the oil every 5,000 miles. But the BMW was different. It had an AI-powered smart maintenance system that knows that if I change the oil too frequently, I'm just wasting time and money. But if I wait too long to change the oil, I risk major breakdowns and expensive repair costs. So it optimizes. It looks at how I drive, the conditions under which I drive, my maintenance records, the maintenance records of all other BMW drivers out there, and it computes exactly the optimal time for me to change the oil. Now, here's why this is important for the military. The military has thousands of ships and boats, tens of thousands of planes and helicopters, and hundreds of thousands of cars, trucks, tanks, and other ground vehicles. And if you scale a system like this across all those vehicles, you can literally save billions in taxpayer dollars. That's the bulk of what the Pentagon is using this for, just like every other large organization across the world, to streamline operations, cut costs, and improve efficiency. So I think this is what we as organizational leaders need to be thinking about. How can we leverage AI to do what we do better, smarter, faster, and cheaper?
Yeah, thank you. Great. So, okay, we're going to shift to what the bulk of this is. Since this is Law Tech Connect, let's get into the AI legal and ethical landscapes, which is always interesting when you're having this topic. As a lot of the panels have said, innovation comes first, right? And then happens first, but regulation's always late to the party. But it's the most integral part for scaling this innovation that we have. So, Mark, I want to shift to you about these privacy concerns. We kind of touched on it, but I think it's time to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the privacy concerns. So, what type of privacy concerns are you seeing on the private and the military side regarding the use of AI?
Well, I think the main thing is, again, it's kind of almost like a question of the quality of the information and the quality of the analysis that change things. So data is available, right? All of our data is available publicly, but AI actually has the ability to do. To treat that kind of like the way an intelligence operation would. So, if a country's trying to protect a secret, then they protect the secret. But the idea is you try and pick away at information that's publicly available or information you get to try and, build a picture from which you can infer what the secret is. You don't need to know the secret, but you can infer it. So that's like with Iran's nuclear program. It's like you don't necessarily have a memo from the Iranians saying this is what we're doing right now, but you can look at things like how much power is being used, how much uranium is being stored, where are scientists located? Are there giant amounts of electricity being used someplace where there aren't any cities or any facilities? And so from all of those different hints, you can get an idea of what it is they're doing. And the problem is that AI kind of is able to do that, but at the personal level. So, there's just vast amounts of data out there. The banks know what we buy. The Easy Pass and, the camera systems know where we drive. Google knows how long we stay at various locations. They know what we're interested in from our search engines and from our viewing habits. And all of those pieces of individual, when they're compartmentalized, might not tell us very much. But if you have an AI that can take all of that data and then synthesize it, it can tell us an enormous amount about us. And in fact, there was a study from 2 years ago, which was really interesting, was done about AI and smart meters on people's houses. And they were able to take the data from the smart meter, and they took it like, what can we tell about people's houses just about the data we get from the smart meter? And they discovered they can figure out makes and models of appliances, when people are in the house, what people are doing, what times are televisions being used or not being used. So there's just a giant amount of information that you could just get from a smart meter. And then, of course, again, if you marry that with all these other things, you can build a really detailed mosaic about a person's life and behavior, and you can infer a lot of those secrets, that you might not know directly from it. So I think that's where the privacy concerns come from AI. It's just, it gives the people who are interested in violating your privacy a much better tool for doing it.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Natalie, let's talk about the laws and policies that are placed to help address that. How are states, how are the federal government, how are they responding to these potential threats when you have these bad actors that can use the same technology for the bad side of things? What are you seeing from a regulatory standpoint to help add safeguards?
Yeah, well, I would say 2019 was really something of a tipping point in terms of states and governments and international organizations really starting to say, wow, this is feeling more real. And I don't think we're ever going to see a time that regulations keep up with technology, and I'm not even sure that we do. But we certainly need those guardrails, and we need more guidance. And I think that it's ultimately going to be market forces that say, yes, if you're a bad actor, if you're not following these guidelines, these regulations, then you're not someone that we're going to interact with. The EU is certainly ahead in regard of they just recently pulled together the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. They certainly had the GDPR, in place. What is it now for three? I would say like at least 3-4 years. But what we're seeing most recently, and I think that generative AI has a lot to do with this, is that in 2023 we had 25 pieces. States introduced 25 pieces of legislation, 18 of which actually were enacted into laws. Then in 2024, we're already with 40 states introducing some AI related legislation. And we had in October of last year, the Biden administration come out with this executive order that really gives a lot of instruction to the various government agencies to say, this is something we're paying attention to. And then me as an employment lawyer, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has done much to say, we don't care what the tool is. Nobody can say an AI tool made this employment decision. We want to see that there is algorithmic fairness. And so these laws that have been in place for decades, they're the same laws that we will impose on you. So if there's an adverse impact, if there's discriminatory results, you, the employer, will be responsible. And then we see some cities like New York City who are saying, and I would say the common theme with all this existing and proposed regulations and laws, it's the same. It's themes of transparency, security, explainability, and accountability. And I think we will continue to see those common themes play out.
Yeah, it's
But
interesting.
yeah, it's going to be an interesting year, I think, with a lot of new legislation around privacy.
Yeah, it's kind of chicken and egg, right? Like you're creating rules, and then AI would just design to outsmart the rules, and then you create new rules to outsmart the AI, and then it just goes on indefinitely, I guess. Cam, this question's for you regarding the biometrics. So with Draganfly developing these biometric systems, what's been your experience in terms of in the marketplace when you're dealing with real world applications with some of the systems, or have you been kind of what's that feedback been? Are you seeing challenges? Are you getting concerns from people that are looking to deploy it? Just what's your experience been with people's sensitivities to things like biometrics?
So for that application specifically, we misstepped a little bit. It was during COVID, and the original application was one of our public safety customers came to us and said they wanted a way to measure social distancing and mask wearing. Because they wanted to see where they wanted to re-resource or public awareness or those types of things. And so we deployed that, and they got some great data out of it and made some adjustments. And it was kind of more of a farce where somebody said, well, it'd be great if you could detect COVID-19. And so we did. And it took about 6 months, and it became a bit of a passion project, and that's why we pushed it forward. And the pushback on that was big. It was really, really big. The second that people found out that this particular department had that capability, I mean, the person in charge just about lost their job. Wow. And this was an elected official. So they didn't. But where we see direct application now is we use the application specifically for things like game farms, safaris, health management, those types of things, where we can do that same type of application where we're actually measuring, the heart rates of livestock and those types of things, which is saving an amazing amount of time. So the military application is obvious, and in a direct search and rescue application, which is something we'll be announcing here in the next couple of days, it is being used to actually take the vital signs of the, people that are, stranded or in shock or such. We actually used the tech in Ukraine during the Kherson Dam sabotage or whatever it was at the same time. So as long as it's got a direct application and it's for the right reasons, we find very little pushback. But the second it's kind of like, hey, this is out there, people's imaginations go crazy, and they don't go crazy. People's imaginations get going, and it's like, it gets shut down pretty quickly. So.
Yeah, and Mark, we'll pass it to you as well. I know we chatted a little bit about biometrics. Any additional comments on that, and how are people responding to it, and what you're seeing?
Yeah, well, the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act has been around long enough now that we're starting to see actually some cases in courts. And there was a case just recently of a company that provides dash cameras for trucking companies and then cloud computing services. One of the things that they can do is facial recognition using it. And a guy brought a suit under the Illinois statute saying that they were violating the statute because they ran their facial recognition technology on him at a specific date using the dash cam. And the court actually, they filed a motion to dismiss to try and say, well, look, we're not really collecting the data. We're not using it in a way that should violate the act. And the court did allow the case to go forward. So the case is going forward. Basically said you haven't proved any damages, but you did at least have the information to show that you, as an Illinois resident, had facial recognition run on you, which is covered by the act, and that's a per se violation, and they were allowed to continue. And the interesting thing though is it's the company that's providing the service, not the trucking company. It's the company that's providing the service that's on the hook, and they're a nationwide service. So that's kind of probably the issue when you get to at the state level, is that if you're providing a nationwide service that involves things like facial recognition, you got to make sure that you're compliant in all of the states you're operating. So I'm sure that these guys just had no idea that, well, the minute the truck crosses into Illinois, we basically have to disable the facial recognition part of it. So as we're starting to see more and more of that, and obviously as more states go into biometric protection, we're going to see a lot more of these things turn into lawsuits.
Yeah. So we need some standardization, kind of, right?
I will just say that law has cost millions and millions of dollars to hundreds of companies. These cases, they settle. They all pretty much settle high, and it was because it all started. It was a case against Six Flags, and a minor's fingerprint was used to get into the park. And so the question was, well, he wasn't hurt. Nobody took his biometric information. There was no identity theft. So where's the damage? And when the Illinois Supreme Court came back and said, this is unique, you can maybe replace your password, but you can't replace your fingerprint. So this is unique to you. So we're not going to wait for there to be any damage. So you can imagine the floodgates open to the point where now the legislature is really thinking twice about this private right of action, because it has just had huge financial impact. But now we have California thinking similarly. But these things, they do add up. And I think there are a number of states that are, or a number of employers that are looking for, can we have some sort of a federal solution just so we don't have this increasing patchwork of state solutions. So sorry.
No, thank you for that. Now that definitely opens the floodgates there when there's no consistency, and something as simple as that can turn into a major lawsuit just because we don't have the rules of engagement because they're being created like in real time, right? The plane's being built while it's in the air. Pat, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'd say when it comes to the biometrics, I see this as a bit of a subset of the privacy issues we've already discussed. So we have these general privacy issues. We have the risk of bias, both of which are already discussed. The third issue I would say that is raised here that we haven't really addressed specifically so far is the cybersecurity risks. As we increase our reliance on technology, particularly AI, we have more avenues, more cybersecurity vulnerabilities, more routes for data intrusion and data theft. And so I would just say that what I see across a lot of industry is that people are deliberately leveraging AI as their offensive strategy to improve what they do for the reasons we've already discussed. I would say that you also need to think about a deliberate cybersecurity defensive strategy to go along with that. The other thing I'll just mention here is I just want to emphasize and reinforce what you just said, Natalie, about the fact that the general rule is that we use existing frameworks to assess these privacy issues. We're not creating all new ones. There's no way that they can keep up with it. I want to give you an example of this general rule. I have a question that I occasionally ask lawyers, but I'm very confident that you all will get the answer right as well. So I'm from San Francisco, and it seems like almost every other car on the street is driverless. So just assume for a second that someone comes into my law office in a wheelchair, telling me the story about they were walking across a crosswalk, were struck by a driverless vehicle, they're now paralyzed. Do they have a case? Do I A, say, oh, it's driverless, sorry about that, out of my office, you have no case? Or do I say B, of course you have a case. We have a long-standing history of products liability and tort liability. You have a case, and I will take your case. What is it? Do I kick this person out, or do they have a case? Of course they have a case, right? This is America. We apply existing frameworks, legal frameworks, even to this new technology, and it's okay. There are some exceptions to that general rule. We've talked about the Illinois Biometric Privacy Act, the California Consumer Privacy Act, the European GDPR, but those are the exceptions. The general rule is across the board is that we apply existing frameworks to this new technology, and it works out okay.
Awesome. Great responses. Thank you all so much. So we're going to get into, this is for Natalie, and then we'll shift to Mark. Intellectual property. When AI creates something, who owns that? And how do you kind of navigate the intellectual property understandings when you may be the thought behind it, but AI is creating it. They're mastering that process. How do you handle intellectual property?
I'm so glad Natalie's answering.
Or is there a basis for even, for the conversation for that?
Well, I mean, I am not an IP attorney. However, I think what we're seeing this play out in the courtrooms because so much these large language models are just trained on infinite amounts of data. And so where does it come from? There are all these questions around ownership. And I think what we'll see when it comes to copyright laws, it's this all sorts of questions about fair use, all sorts of questions about was it a human that created it? Because what we know thus far is if you prompt an LLM, if you're just giving a prompt and you get something, you can't claim ownership over that. So then it becomes this question of how much human are we going to need to have in that creation. But all of that is just playing out right now. Mark, you might have more to say about that.
Yeah, actually, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. And it also goes to what you were talking about, which is that we also have to keep in mind, even though AI is something that's really new, we have just a monumental amount of existing laws, and they all apply to AI. Just the AI as a tool, so they'd apply to it just like no matter what other tool you're using. But in the case of AI, there was a guy, I think his name was Steyer, was that his name? He had an AI, and he was very aggressive early on. No, I'm sorry, Thayer. He was very early on in trying to get computer-generated artworks and inventions copyrighted and patented. And he's lost those. And the courts basically said, well, if you look at copyright law, copyright says that an individual or a person may copyright something. And then they basically came out like that an AI is not an individual or person. Therefore, it cannot, even it may create the work, but it cannot copyright the work. It can't be the author of a work. And the same thing with a patent. He created a test case where he had the AI make two novel inventions. One was some kind of bizarre cup holder. And the other one, I think, was a light. And the patent office, for the same way, said, the AI can't patent this because only individuals can patent things. And he tried to make arguments like, well, the right to patent is in the Constitution. It's to foster creativity, and we should look at the original purpose of patent and copyright. And of course, no, because we have statutes, and the statutes say what they say. And if you want remedy, either these things have to be recognized as individuals, or Congress has to say that AI can copyright its own stuff. But then what you were talking about, once the AI creates something, though, then you can have a transformative work. So you can take somebody else's work. There was the Andy Warhol case last year in the Supreme Court. And if you make enough changes to it, you change its meaning, you meme it, then that might be copyrightable because you've transformed the work. And the same thing with, patents, there's prior art and all sorts of stuff like that. So there are vehicles available to copyright output from AI, but they're going to have some kind of human involvement to turn it into something that can be copyrighted.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's interesting to see where this is going to go. So, I guess strap up and put your thinking caps on, as my teacher would say back in the day, right? Okay, so for the sake of time, we're gonna shift things around a little bit. I know we've been talking a lot about U.S. and I would like to take a look internationally at this point. Let's start with Cam. Draganfly's a Canadian company. Are you seeing any differences in the U.S. and in Canada in terms of how AI is being deployed or how it's being used or even accepted? And then, Mark, I want to focus with you a little bit on the EU AI Act. I understand you have some experience there, so maybe we'll let Cam, if you want to take it, any points from an international side?
Yeah. Well, I hate to offer a boring answer, but no, there's not really,
Or even in Draganfly Sphere around the globe, what you're doing, where you're deploying your technology. I know you're in some other countries, you're doing some other things with it.
Yeah. No, it's for the most part, it's being, I think the innovation side of AI is being led here in terms of getting it commercial, right? Certainly seeing some hardcore tech in some other parts of the world that are pretty impressive. And then obviously the privacy side in Europe, it tends to be a much more evolved or advanced or a different cultural kind of fit around that. But for the most part, the difference between Canada and the US is nominal, if anything.
Has to be expected. Well,
it's okay with me.
Yeah. Mark, let's talk about this EU AI Act.
So the EU law that passed, I think, in March. It was only about a month ago, and it covers a wide range of not just current hot button issues, dealing with biometrics, privacy, and AI use, that impacts your privacy. But a lot of future stuff as well is baked into it. They have the stuff that you would expect that a law enforcement can't use, facial recognition, except under certain well-defined circumstances. They stopped people from using CCTV feeds to scrape facial recognition images so they can generate, on large databases of faces. But even stuff like, they banned the use of AI for social credit scores. They banned the use of AI for emotion reading in a lot of settings like schools and businesses and things like that. Apparently there's concerns, that would be used, against people, particularly, again, in schools and other settings. They banned the use of AI for predictive crime prevention. Basically, the Minority Report pre-crime stuff that's actually outlawed. So the law is 459 pages. So obviously there's a lot in it. There's a couple of really good summaries out there. If you're interested in it, that are like 2 or 3 pages. The EU puts out one that's good. But I think they're in the last stages now. I think they have to go through some process where the law is translated into all the different national laws, and then it has to go through a final process. But basically, unless you have anything else?
No, well, one interesting distinction. So I told you how the EEOC has sort of said, whatever happens, we don't care what you use. The EU AI Act is actually holding developers accountable as well. And it's a fascinating sort of risk system that they've laid out. I think it's
transparency is another big.
Absolutely, yeah, huge.
Well, that actually leads us to our next point. We're in the lightning round now, so we're going to go and take about a minute each just to give a couple tips, and you can talk transparency, how to communicate with the public as to how these tools are being utilized, how to educate people, or how to keep humans in a loop, or whatever you find that you may want to start with. So let's do about a minute each as a lightning round. Hot topic.
Okay. I will say we're facing a major skills gap as a nation. We need to stay competitive. We need to educate ourselves. Tools like generative AI and all of the different learning mechanisms we have, like learning through augmented reality, through virtual reality. We must do better because of the major skills gap, major need for reskilling and upskilling, and our adversaries and allies, everyone understands how huge that is. I hope that we do wake up and do all that we can to educate and upskill.
I'll share 2 tips for adopting and leveraging AI. The first is, what standards do you apply? My recommendation is the default standard should be leverage it when it's better than humans. When I was growing up, my mom used to say that you'll never read a story about the 10,000 houses that didn't burn down last night. You'll only hear about the one that did. And this reminds me of Tesla stories. Like, you read about a Tesla accident and like, oh my gosh, Tesla accident. Oh, they're crazy dangerous. If you compare the Teslas to human driver performance, they're far better. So I would say just keep in mind, like if it does better than humans, think about leveraging AI. And humans often perform at a very low level. I think we all can acknowledge that. The second tip is closely related, and it's something I call human-machine teaming. People will come at you like, are you going to go with humans or are you going to go with the machine? And I'm telling you, that's a false dichotomy. You can have both, and you can have the best of both. So figure out the things that humans do well, leverage humans for that. Figure out the things that the machines do well, use them for that, and then combine them in a way that leverages the respective strengths of each. So again, better than human standard is the default standard, and human-machine teaming is something you should strive for.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And part of it is, that I think the flip side of it is, particularly for people, who are just using it, as a tool and not immersed in the technologies, you have to be aware of what the limitations of particularly like generative AI. If I'm using AI in my law firm, I'm involved in a lawsuit, and I have 1 million documents that need to go through discovery, and I have to pull out all the relevant documents. There's a really good case out there to use AI. You can train it on the documents, and it can do a good job. But at the end of the day, if the algorithm is missing documents, my name is on the pleading, and I'm going to be the one who's going to have to pay the sanction. The AI isn't going to get sanctioned if it's missing documents. I'm the one who has to go in front of the court and explain where the screw up was. And the same time recently, there was I don't remember the name of the guy. He's a commentator, and somebody put into one of the generative AIs a question about whether or not the person was a racist. And it came back with a paragraph basically saying that, yes, this person was a racist. And it had quotes in it with attribution of things he'd said that were very racist. The problem was the source was completely made up, and the quote was completely made up. And so, while there may be an issue about whether or not the AI can slander someone, if you're relying on the AI and then you publish that, you've actually slandered someone. So it's really important. And I think there is, to a certain extent, again, for laymen, the more complex the system is, if it's a black box, we tend to trust it more because we don't understand how it works. So we put our aspirations for how it should work into it. It's like, well, if I designed this, it would do this and this and this, and it wouldn't do those things. And so since I don't know how it works, that's kind of how I assume it works. And the fact is it might not be doing any of those things. So again, you have to kind of, look at it from a very realistic standpoint, I think.
Yeah, kind of, man, those are great answers. Wish I was a lawyer. I think kind of speaking to all of those points, as humans, we focus, for evolutionary reasons, 10 times more on what is a threat than what is an opportunity or what is a benefit. So I think in particular, as it relates to AI, and, I'll relate it back to drones and product services, we need to focus on what it does well and really stay narrow on that. Try to stay away from the sensationalization of what it could be and where it's going to go and everything else. And let's focus on the life that it saved. Let's focus on, the efficiency that it created. Let's focus on the capital that it freed up in order to do something else that really mattered and was really, really applicable to us. And I think that just doing that one step at a time, this is all moving so quick. It'll all be anything and everything we all want it to be, but just laser focus on the things that are working well. And that's where we want to spend our time.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. We're going to do some closing remarks and call it a day, and we'll have.
When creative works were made and published, they were not made with the deliberate intention of using that information to create new information without the consent of the original creators. When AI systems behave in a way that is in direct violation of the safety of its operators, issues arise. When AI systems can be manipulated to act without steering mechanisms, they become rogue and decommissions the operators. I have one tip, and it ties to my concluding remark. It is very important that we develop systems that are transparent and ones that put humans at the center. Thank you again, and you can reach me at rom@valmis.com.
Great. So here it is, closing remarks. So last 30 seconds. And also remember, how can folks get in touch with you? So if you want to drop your email, your LinkedIn, WhatsApp, whatever it is that you use, here's your chance. So Cam, you want to just closing remarks?
Yeah, I think, we can't be afraid of it. Fear begets fear. And whether it was going from slide rulers to calculators, and kids aren't going to learn how to, add or subtract, or, it's the exact same thing repeating itself over and over again. So I do think in many respects we need to embrace what this is. I think these types of discussions, and I think most of the laws are there, and it's going to continue to evolve. But frankly, as a human species, we're not going to survive another 10,000 years or 1,000 years without the use of this type of evolved technology.
Yeah, from a legal standpoint, I think it's unless your business is focused on a specific locality and you're only providing services in a specific locality, you do kind of have to keep an eye open for what's going on in other states around the country, because somebody could be doing something in their state legislature which is going to make your way of doing business illegal and open you up to all sorts of civil penalties or private lawsuits. So you kind of have to keep an eye out for what's going on, because the landscape is changing very quickly on a lot of these things.
Learn how to responsibly embrace generative AI. If you Google Natalie Pierce and generative AI, I have been trying to publish quite a bit in that space. It's your superpower. You can do it. You can do it responsibly. Also, plug for Perplexity, especially if you can spring for Perplexity Pro, because when we are concerned about hallucinations, we are concerned about information that's out there that's not true. The beauty of Perplexity is that it will link to all the sources until you can see the sources and figure out what you trust.
Thank you. I'll just wrap up by saying that I am an AI optimist. I love how Cam said we over-focus on threats and under-focus on opportunities. And I would say that generative AI is a huge opportunity for all of us to improve the way we do what we do. So I would say play with it, figure out what it does well and leverage it for that, figure out its shortcomings and either build in some guardrails or don't use it for that, but use it to improve what you do. And I think it helps all of us stay ahead of our competition. If you're in the military, that leads to victory. If you're in the commercial world, it leads to commercial success. So no matter who you are or where you are, it's very helpful.
Awesome. And that's the end of our panel. Thank you so much.